Okay, guys, I think it's time to start this session. Actually, this is our first tech talk we have done, and I have been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now. It's going to be really, really, really nice. And my name is Erik, and I work here at Inuit, and we will be hosting this one today. But I will not be the expert. It's all the way from Arizona. I got my dear friend and colleague from ManageEngine, Derek. Very welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here in very nice and warm Arizona. I think the high today will be around 20, 22, 21 Celsius. So that's good.
Great. So you actually told me that the sun is starting to rise, and for us, the sun is starting to set. So we will discuss some very interesting topics today. And Derek, do you want to say anything more before we start about a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'll do a quick introduction. So I of course worked for ManageEngine, specifically the AD Solutions team, and really what my job is to kind of tour the world, evangelize Active Directory, group policy, security, Azure. And really help organizations and administrators better understand how they can manage and secure their environments. So we do a lot of events, whether they be webinars. We're actually doing a 4-part series right now, but we also have a world tour that we go around the world to about 30 different countries, probably maybe 90 cities total, and we really talk about how to solve issues within Active Directory. So that's kind of the things that I deal with, and this is certainly going to be a great event, so people can see us, people can see the screen, and we can have a good conversation about Active Directory. It's good.
Great. And guys, if you like, this is a tech talk. If you have any questions during this presentation, I will of course ask Derek a couple of ones during the session, but it would be actually better if you can ask the questions and I can take them over to Derek like live. If we don't have the time for all these questions, we will wrap them up in an email, send them over to you as soon as we can, right?
Absolutely, that's perfect.
Perfect. So Derek, exactly how many years of experience in Active Directory do you have?
I guess 19. So Active Directory came out in 2000, and I've been an MVP both in Active Directory and in group policy every year since. And before that, I worked in Windows NT. So I've been in the Windows domain identity access management world for a long time. So, but I'm only 21, so it's kind of confusing how the age really doesn't match the experience, but it's just math.
So. Yeah, it's math. It's like a wine. You're just getting better and better.
So, exactly. I hope
so. So let me ask you, like if you're gonna find some about the key issues you have seen over the year in Active Directory or management of Active Directory, can you pinpoint few of them?
So what I want to do is I want to tie that answer to security, not just management, but security. And one of the things when I was an administrator in my previous life that I wish that I had was the ability to see what other people were doing. Because in most organizations, there isn't just one administrator. And if you and I are administrators and I'm on holiday and you're back at the office making changes, I want to see those changes. So one of the things that I think is vital for an organization is to have something in place that is going to, I guess, bring to the top the concepts of change, monitoring, and management. And if we tie that to security, you know, if we break down most attacks and breaches, the attackers want privileged access. So we must know when changes are occurring, whether they be good or bad, and we have to know who has privileges at all time. Because if someone has a privilege and we don't know it, well, they can gain access to virtually anything in the environment, And we are just blindly working. And if you look at Marriott, it took Marriott 4 years to determine that they were breached. So that's just an example of what I'm talking about, where we need to have systems in place that are going to help us track the environment. So I have, my live Active Directory environment here. And if I just pull up Active Directory users and computers, which still today, 19 years later, I find that most organizations are still using this. If I look at the critical groups, whether that be domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, if I jump up here and go to, I have backup operators, administrators, any change to any of these groups, unless you have a system in place that is going to bring these changes to the surface, those changes go unnoticed. So I think, a long-winded answer to your question is, we have to know who has privileges, and the way to do that is put in a system that is going to help monitor the changes and then alert us of those changes.
Okay, cool. So can you give an example of, okay, so you're talking about monitoring. You're talking about the stuff that happens inside Active Directory. Can you give
exactly
one example of something that could be?
So let's say that I'm the rogue administrator and you're the good guy, right? And so what you want is to know when I do things. So if I come over here to domain admins in the live Active Directory and I decide to add a member to this group, you would want to know about that. Now, first of all, keep in mind the way that we track changes in Active Directory is through auditing. So if I just pull up group policy here, you'll see that I have a GPO that has auditing configured in it. So my suggestion is to actually use this advanced auditing. So in a GPO linked to the domain, you'll see here that I have all of these advanced audit configurations enabled. Once I have this enabled, I now am tracking changes that occur in Active Directory. The unfortunate thing is those changes that are tracked, the events show up in the security log, and we all know how pathetic the security log is. I mean, it doesn't have any searching, it doesn't have any reporting, but I can guarantee you that all of the information goes through this log. So again, if I set up auditing and then I go back to Active Directory and I make a change and I add someone to the group. Let's say that I add Tor to this group. So as soon as I click OK, you, the good administrator, want to receive an alert that Tor was added. And you see right here in my dashboard that I already have an alert immediately when someone was added to that group. Of course, removing someone would also generate an alert, but this is a solution, AD Audit Plus, that allows the administrative team to know when changes are occurring. And then if I want to see like a historical view of this, I can always come into my reports and I can look at all the privilege groups that have been modified, not just within a day. Let's say I want to see in the last 30 days, I want to see every change that's occurred to any of my privileged groups in the last 30 days. So I think with a solution like this, you're getting a multitude of things that every organization needs. One, you have insight into critical changes to your groups that control Active Directory as well as the rest of the enterprise. And two, you also now have a view of all of the changes that have occurred over time to know when privileges have changed.
Okay, cool. So you're talking about an alert, sure? And you go into the user interface and you can see there is an alert. But I'm not a really techie guy, but if I would try to receive an alert, I had to get notice somehow. So is it just an alert in an interface, or can I trigger something, or can I?
So let me show you the options. So if I come in here to my alerts, and in here you'll see this is my alert for, a modified administrative group. I can come in here and I can set up different types of alerts. So I'm just showing in the dashboard, but I can do email notifications, I can do SMS, because yes, it's great to have, these huge screens with a dashboard on there, but many times we're in meetings or we're somewhere else and we always have our phone with us. So, AD Audit Plus gives you the ability to construct whether you want text messages or whether you want an email notification for alerts.
Okay, cool. So do you consider like the group's modification, or would you see anything else inside Active Directory being an issue? We got a lot of questions about GPOs. It's so complex, and it's so many people have crashed.
Yeah, I mean,
so many things.
Group policy is that area that most Active Directory administrators are afraid of. They're not really afraid of really anything else, but what they are afraid of is jumping into group policy and making a mistake. Because, if we just open up any GPO and look at the vast amount of information that's in here, I mean, we have so many settings and they're so complex, and one setting could go in and destroy all of your computer's ability to communicate. So with group policy, what I have seen over the years, especially a group policy MVP, is organizations and administrators are afraid to use this. But what I'm going to encourage all administrators is to just start slow and work with group policy in bits and pieces, because it's critical that you do that. Now, one of the things that you can do with group policy is make sure that you have a recovery plan. So a couple of things that I want to talk about with that. One is, I recommend, and I'm going to give you some action items, all of our viewers some action items. What I want everyone to do when they're done with this tech talk is that I want you to go into the group policy management console. I want you to come down here to group policy objects, and I want you to back up all your GPOs. Super simple to do. And that way you at least have something to go back to in case of a misconfiguration or something else going on. The second thing that I'm going to recommend that you do is you actually get the tool that we're looking at, AD Audit Plus, for group changes, but you use this for GPO changes. So for example, if I come down here under group policy management, I can see all GPOs that have been created over the last 6 months. So this gives you a view into what has changed. Now, I not only have the ability to see created GPOs, but modified GPOs. So in the last 30 days, these are all the modifications that have occurred across all of my group policy objects. I can tell you without a doubt, Microsoft doesn't have a tool to do this that comes with Active Directory. They have some back office tools, but those come at a high premium, where a solution like AD Audit Plus, I mean, you see just a couple of clicks and I have all the information that I need with group policy changes. But it doesn't stop there with group policy. I also can get into the details. So you'll see here that I have details around the password policy, the account lockout policy, administrative template changes. So I actually have what are called CSE changes, client-side extension. So what we've done is we've broken down the group policy object into its different components, so you can see where those changes are occurring. And again, if I pull up, history, let's go to password. I know there's been some of those in the last time. You'll see that I have the details. Now, one of the things that I always stress to group policy administrators is when they're in the interface, there is no undo, right?
Exactly. But the update is scary.
It is. So one of the things that we expose through AD Audit Plus is we give you the details of the old value and the new value, which is pretty powerful when it comes to group policy. Now, everything that I'm showing you here is just change monitoring and reporting. But what happens if you make a change to group policy and you change 20 settings? You know, you could come in here and do that manually, but what I'm going to suggest is you actually get a solution like Recovery Manager, which allows you to roll back those changes. So this is a solution that allows you to dive in and see all of the changes that have occurred over a certain amount of time. So if I start a new rollback here, and let's say that I want to go back to a certain point in time. So I want to go back to, let's say, November 30th of last year. Now, think about this. I want everyone viewing to think about the power of this. I'm going to go back to November 30th, and I'm going to be able to see all changes that have occurred with group policy. Now, of course, I can do it with all of these objects, but we're kind of focusing on group policy. So I'm going to see every change that's occurred since then. So it's going through all of the transactions that have occurred, and it's going to show me all group policy changes. Now, notice there's only one change, but I can see the details, and I can actually just pick what I want, and I can roll back one setting over 3-month time period in any GPO. That's the power of something like Recovery Manager. And again, you know, I'm not one to sit here and just, you know, kick Microsoft in the shins, but group policy is so complicated and we're so afraid of it. If we get solutions like this, it makes things easier. It allows us to actually leverage what we want to leverage in the environment. So these are some different things around group policy that I highly recommend organizations look at.
Cool. I actually got a question here. I could try to translate it. What is the process of enabling group policy for member servers and domain controllers? Whether to create separate GPOs and not touch existing policy?
Let's make sure I understand the question. Can you repeat it one more time?
What is the process of enabling group policy for member servers and domain controllers? Whether to create separate GPOs and not touch existing policy? Okay,
so let's invert that question and talk about the two default GPOs. We have two default GPOs. We have default domain policy, and we have the default domain controllers policy. It is my recommendation to not modify these GPOs. The reason for that is I don't trust Microsoft. Now, I don't think too many of us really trust Microsoft, but what I don't want is a service pack or some hot fix to accidentally put these GPOs back to the original and overwrite my settings. So I highly recommend, as you see here, that you create additional GPOs to do the settings that you want to put in place. Now, let's talk about the first part of that question, which is domain controllers and member servers. What I do recommend is that you make sure that you do secure your domain controllers at a certain level. Now, the default domain controllers policy does a pretty good job of securing domain controllers, especially in the area of user rights. So if I come into that GPO here and we drill down to our security settings, you'll see that this is the default configuration of user rights that come out of the box. So Microsoft does a pretty good job. There are also some handful of security settings that you see here. So this does a good foundation. If you want to increase security of your domain controllers, all you need to do is create another GPO, link it to the domain controllers OU, and then configure your settings in that new GPO. So that will take care of your domain controllers. Well, what about your member servers? For your member servers, by default, keep in mind that all of your new computers, member servers and workstations, end up here in your computer's container. But you can't link a group policy object to a container. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to create OUs that are going to organize your servers in such a way that you link a GPO to that OU that contains those servers, configure your settings in that GPO, and all the servers in that OU now receive those settings equally, right? So let me just give you an idea. So if, let's say that these machines right here happen to be my servers. So what I would do is I would create a new organizational unit for member servers. And then I would take those computers, those servers, and I would move them to my member servers OU. Then in group policy, right? So now I'm back in my GPO. Let's give this a refresh. So now I have my member servers and I can create a new GPO. So member server security settings. And now that I have my new GPO, I simply come in here, edit it, configure any settings, and all of those computers that I put in here get the same settings. That's how you do it for member servers.
Awesome. Awesome. I think that's really good information for the people out there. I know we have all been dealing with the kind of the first regulation compliance we ever faced in such a hard way is GDPR. And we all have been doing this. And at least we here in Inuit have got a lot of questions around groups, because the issue, what we have seen is people have so many groups and so little control. It's groups inside groups, and actually, like, this is actual a real case. So we actually was managed to get a report. They had like thousands of groups. I bet you 65% of all the groups was no member inside. Is there any way to get this information in a good way? See group memberships, trying to start to clean it a little bit inside Active Directory. Would you recommend? This is just a personal question, actually.
Yeah. So you know, the unfortunate thing that all of us live with is Microsoft created Active Directory users and computers, which you see on my screen now, in the year 2000. So that was 19 years ago. And they haven't updated it. I mean, there's been like 2 minor changes to Active Directory users and computers. And 19 years ago, we didn't know what the problems were going to be. We really didn't have the compliance regulations that we have today. And we didn't know how much we were going to be relying on Active Directory. So both of your issues are valid. One is, I call it group bloat. It's the idea that people create a group with the intention of using it and never use it. So we have all these groups and they have no members. The second thing is we've relied on group nesting, which is what we should do, right? I mean, I've been teaching group nesting since back in Windows NT, but the problem is that Microsoft doesn't give us an option to report. I mean, just keep in mind that there is no reporting option here in Active Directory users and computers. Even if I go in and I look at the member list, there's no report option. There's no give me a file of this. So both of these are huge issues, and neither one of them are solved inside of Active Directory users and computers. Now, what I would like to show you is a Microsoft tool that does it, but it doesn't exist. So what I'm going to do is show you an easy solution for these, and again, couple of clicks, and I'm going to get you the answers that you need. So let's tackle the first one, empty groups. I want to get a list of all groups that don't have members. So with a couple of clicks, in AD Manager Plus, AD reports, group reports, groups without members, generate, what is that, 4 clicks now? Done. Okay, so in 4 clicks, I got a list of every group in Active Directory that doesn't have a member. Now, if I want to report on this, all I need to do is export it as a PDF or CSV, and I'm done. Ooh, let's go back to that. Export, and then I export. So within 4 clicks, I got all the groups that don't have members, and in 5 clicks, I got a report for someone. So efficiency is really what I'm about. I want everyone that I communicate with Active Directory to be more efficient, so they have more time to do more fun stuff. Because let's be honest, getting group reports is not a fun thing to do. It's boring. So this solves our first problem. Now, what about the second problem? The second problem is something related to group nesting. So, for example, if I come in here to administrators, you'll see that I have groups nested within the group. And there's no way using Active Directory users and computers to get all of the nested groups. It's called recursive, right? There's no way to get all of the members down through all the group nesting using Active Directory users and computers. But again, with a couple of clicks, with a tool that's designed to do this, I'm able to get detailed group members down to the users. So for example, administrators was the group we were looking at. And all I want to do is get all the users and all the groups that are in administrators. And again, that was 2 clicks, and here's all the users. You'll remember when I go back here to Active Directory users and computers, and I go to administrators and I go to members, I only see 2 users. In reality, there are 10 users that have membership because of the group nesting. So with 2 clicks, you get a list, and then with everything, you can export that to something. So these types of actions are frustrating for me, for my administrative people, because they do this every day, but they don't have a tool to help them. That's where AD Manager Plus comes in.
Okay, cool. There's a gentleman here asking, like, if you can give some light on AD object access policy, like OU schema, critical areas, SACLs. I think it's like too big question, but maybe we can take some small piece out of it. Do you feel anything that is more important out of this?
Well, so I'm gonna kind of throw out the schema, because the schema doesn't change that often. However, what I will say, because we've already seen this, is if you use AD Audit Plus, and again, all you have to do is set up the auditing that I showed you. You can get alerts on when the schema changes. It's built in to AD Audit Plus. So if the schema changes, you'll see this on my screen. You can set up an alert for that. So the concepts around the core services in Active Directory, DNS, the schema, any of those things that change sites, FSMO roles, you can see them all right here. If any of those change, AD Audit Plus is already configured to have a report, and with a couple of clicks, you can get alerts. So that's easy enough, in my opinion. Now, a more complicated area is the first part of that you mentioned, which I think they said something like AD object access. That is more complicated. And that's more complicated because it's very complicated, right? That is the idea that if someone went in and did delegated control, that delegated control is setting permissions on the OU in Active Directory. Now, if we look at the details of the results of delegation, we have to go to the security tab and then advanced, and we can see the result of delegation. So this one here has had delegation for HD techs, master admins, finance managers, right? So whether these are correct or not at this point is a moot point, and that's kind of a different issue that we can get into. But what I want to really promote is if delegations change. So let's say, for example, that an administrator's at lunch, they're reading a document about delegation. So they open up their Active Directory users and computers and are like, I wonder how this works. And they come in here and they add in, let's say, a specific user, right? And then they go in and say, okay, well, I wonder what this user can do. Well, they can reset passwords. And then they're like, well, that was easy. But they just gave a user the ability to reset passwords for everyone in HR. What I want you to have in place is a solution that gives you alerts on that. So you'll notice right here, I already have alerted you. I've sent you an email, I've sent you a text message alerting you to that change. Now, that the question you asked, Eric, or the person asked, was a big one, right? It had all these different concepts in Active Directory. But what I'm trying to get across is that AD Audit Plus comes out of the box with reports on all of these areas. And all you have to do to get alerts is point to a new profile to the report and you're done. It's that simple. It is super simple. So AD Audit Plus is a monitoring, reporting, and alerting solution out of the box. Once it's you just install it and it starts to work. It's that awesome.
But now I think we're just focusing right on the on-premise Active Directory at the moment. But we feel here is like so many people starting to move over to the cloud, but now they're in a hybrid environment. There will also be changes in the cloud. Is it some possibility to see that too?
Yeah, this has been something I've been focusing on for the last couple of months, which is this concept of hybrid, and it is complex. I feel like I have a phenomenal control of Active Directory on-prem, but when we start moving into Azure AD, it becomes more complicated, and we need tools to help with that. Now, I have a couple of things to show you here. One is, this is my live Azure environment. And, if I come in here and look at groups, I have my groups and they're here, but it's a totally different world than what you wanted with basically on-prem. And one of the things that I found out as I was going through and learning Azure is we don't have the same concept of like domain admins and enterprise admins of groups. We have these things called roles and administrators. And these roles and administrators control things within the Azure Active Directory environment. And the top of the top is the global administrator. So, I can come in here, I can get a listing of my global administrator, I can see my members. But I think one of the most important things is I want to know when this changes. I mean, Azure has, just like on-prem, has audit logs. But unfortunately, just like on-prem, we don't have alerting. I mean, I don't know when these things change. So I need a solution that is going to help me know when things change. It's the exact same model that we started off this conversation. You have to know when privileges change. And there's no mechanism inside of the Azure portal to do that. So again, I'm going to go back to AD Audit Plus. AD Audit Plus has a predefined report, and you can alert to it when a role changes in Azure Active Directory. So the one, I mean, we've all been talking about, single pane of glass over the last 10 years with management tools. Well, that's what I'm getting here. You'll notice that Active Directory and Azure are side by side in AD Audit Plus, giving me the information, and the monitoring, reporting, and alerting, it's all right here.
Cool. Looking good. There's actually so many questions coming in. It's fantastic. Very specific. But let me let me roll back a little bit, Eric. So for the Active Directory, I mean, it's a difficult system. It's been there for a while, and it's like a high risk system. If your AD crashes, I guess you're done. At least for today, you have a lot of work to do. At least.
Yeah.
And let's go back and even then to the security. Like if there is anything you can point out that people should go home and do in Active Directory, and look over, maybe it could be 2, 3, 4 settings. So
do you mean from what is there right now?
Yeah.
Or
let's
what
just say
should
exactly like 2 settings or 3 settings they should check that this is something that is very important. Password policy, should they
yeah, so all right, so let's start basic and let's go a little complicated. So let's do basic. So I'm gonna come back in here to AD Manager Plus, and let's go to our reports. What I highly recommend is you come in here, and the great thing about AD Manager Plus, if our viewers don't have it, it's free for 30 days, full blown. So everything that I'm showing them, they can download, install, configure AD Manager Plus in about 30 minutes, get all of these things done in a week, and then they can uninstall it, and they got all this. So these are things that you can actually do in today if you wanted, right? Because they're going to be so basic. But it's going to give you amazing insight into what you have for security posture. So first of all, what I'm going to recommend is you come back to this detailed group members, and that you list one by one all of your privileged groups: domain admins, enterprise admins, schema admins, group policy creator owner, administrators, and you get a report down to the user level through all of the nested groups of all the users, and you verify that it's correct. That's your first one, okay? Pretty simple. Second, what I'm gonna highly recommend is that you go into your reports and you look for, let's see if I can find it here. So password report, where is my password policy? Right here. So other reports, password policy. I want you to generate what your password policy is, okay? So you may think you know what your password policy is, but this will actually tell you. What I find is a lot of administrators come into Group Policy Management Console and they go to the default domain policy settings, security settings, password policy, and they think this is what's in place. Now, I'm going to scare you a little bit here, but this is, you asked me to do this, right? So right here is the minimum password length of 7 and the maximum password age of 42. You see this is the default, but you can clearly see here that that is not what I have in place, okay? Minimum password length is 0. You cannot rely on the group policy report. You have to have a tool that can show you what the actual password policy is that's in place. And it's not the default domain policy all the time, okay? So that's number 2. Number 3, I'm gonna show you a tool that's built into every single Windows computer that gives you amazing insight into the security settings on that machine. So if you go to a command or just go to start and then type secpol.msc. I'll leave it up there for a minute. secpol.msc. There's nothing you have to install to get to this tool. But this tool, oops, hold on, did I type it correctly? Well, that's kind of weird. There we go. I must have put a space in or something. So you'll come down here to local policies, security options, and let me point out some critical settings that are in here. I'm going to send you down here to about 2/3 of the way down, and we're going to look at anonymous access. Make sure that all of these anonymous settings are configured properly. They're all right here. If you don't know what correct is, go out to our blog, search on anonymous, and I have all the details there for you. Okay. Also come down here to LAN manager authentication level. LAN manager authentication level is critical because what we want to do is eliminate legacy authentication protocols like LAN manager in NTLM version 1. So you have to know how to get to this setting in order to do that. This is the way to do that. This is like in the core of the security configurations in your environment, and this is the way to get the information. So that kind of gives you 3 different settings, Eric, that kind of start with basic but important, all the way down to very complicated and difficult to access.
Cool. Okay, there's actually more questions, but to be honest with you, Derek, I don't think we have time anymore. But
we'll have to do this again.
We have to do this again, please. This is all recorded for you guys. So if there's any settings, any tool, any questions hasn't been answered, you can always provide. We will try to send you the link by tomorrow. Just make Marcus, the marketing guy at the office here, he just need to fix it a little bit. But for sure, tomorrow you will be given the link for watching the webinar or this tech talk, whatever you want in the car or anything else. There's also another thing. Let me show you. Actually, Derek, I'm gonna steal your control just here for one sec here, because there's something I want to show the audience. Just give me 2 minutes here. So I guess you guys, hopefully you can see my screen here.
You need to clean up your desktop.
It's really bad. But okay, so Derek, there's a lot of information, but there's actually like a chance for you to come here to get even more information. So if you go to our webpage, inuit.se, go to events, and we have a user conference coming up the 13th and 14th of March. And guess what? Derek will be here. So all of these specific questions you have asked now about showing this, showing that, to talk more about Jet and Gia or LAN manager, or even discuss more about security and best practices and all of these kind of things. This is your chance to come here. There's a lot of things here. We're gonna go around the AI. That's something I'm looking forward, the AI and UBA. We haven't been talking so much about this during this tech sessions, but I'm sure we got the chance there. There will be some case studies. The second day, there will be more of a workshop, open floor Q&A discussion with Derek. There will be Office 365. Like, I don't know, Derek, do you have anything, comments here about the agenda? Is there something they can't really miss? The power.
Yeah, so you know, this, for me, this is one of my favorite things. You know, in my core, I'm an educator. So I've actually done these workshops that we're going to be doing at this user conference, at other user conferences in other countries. And I'm going to challenge everyone to attend and bring your most difficult questions, because I may not be able to answer those questions live, but I guarantee someone in the room can answer them. And it is an amazing way for you to bring things that you're struggling with: replication, group policy, permissions, delegation, privileges, whatever it is. Bring those to this workshop on the second day, because all I'm going to have in front of me is my computer and you guys asking questions and me trying to answer them. And it is an amazing opportunity to have. It's a geek out, right? We're just geeking out about Active Directory, and it's been so much fun. I've done it twice in other countries, and it's awesome. And it's just awesome.
Cool. Yeah, so go to our webpage, guys. And then I think we have to wrap it up here. If you like this, please give us. This is the first time we have this. We need some feedback. That's the only way we can move on forward, doing it better, maybe more technical. I don't know. But we are dependent on your feedback. So please take your time to do that, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, guys, thank you so much. There's been actually really good attendees, questions, all of this. We're gonna leave you from now. So myself, I thank you very much. You take your time off. I know you have a stressy day, but it's Friday tomorrow, so it's starting to get there.
Woohoo! Yes.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Derek, so much. Good morning.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, exactly.
Take care.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Yep, see you guys soon.
Cheers.
Bye.
See you.